Hello, everyone, and welcome to How I Built This Resilience Edition. How is everybody doing? As you know, all this week we've been talking fashion and beauty here on the show, and we are taking your questions right now on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube for James Reinhart of ThredUP. ThredUP is the world's largest online thrift store and consignment shop. They sell secondhand clothing, mainly for women and children. James is with me from his home in the Bay Area. James, welcome.
Thanks, Guy. Great to be here.
So first of all, how are you? How are you doing? How are you? And I know you've got kids, and how are you holding it together right now?
Well, I mean, it's my first Zoom call of the day, so things are holding together pretty good so far. But yeah, we're making do. We're 2 months into this. You're a fellow Bay Area guy, and we're holding it together. 3 kids and this job, and making do.
So 3 kids, tons of Zoom calls in the house, right? I've got that too, 2 kids and Zoom calls in school and no bandwidth and, right? I mean, yeah. And doing your job. Let's talk about, I mean, this conversation, we're going to focus a lot on resilience and some of the things that you're doing, but let's first talk about the business. You had 500 employees before the crisis. Have you had to have any layoffs so far?
We've done a small handful of layoffs, but they've been relatively modest. We did a furlough, a couple months ago, where we cut back some of the hours of our employees. And the biggest challenge has been we run distribution centers, so we have more than 1,000 folks across those facilities, and so the real tension has been keeping those employees safe, managing through all the complexity of the guidelines. And so we've been able to kind of hold it together and do the best we can, but certainly the people piece has been the most challenging part.
Yeah, and just a reminder, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, please submit your questions for James Reinhart of ThredUP. Love your questions, so please keep them coming in. James, the way it works for people who don't know is you get a bag, like a cleaner closet out bag from ThredUP. Yep. You fill it up with stuff, send it in. So first of all, have you seen a spike in people sending you stuff? I mean, maybe people looking for ways to generate some income right now?
Yeah, we have seen a huge surge. I mean, I think folks, being home, sort of going through their closet and saying, hey, I don't really need this anymore. So we really have seen a surge. And we've been, encouraging people. This is a great moment for people to pick up some new behaviors and do some things a little differently. And so the surge has been great for us. And, now the challenge is we have to get through and process all of those things.
Yeah.
Right? And that's been the trickiest part.
Right. That's what I'm wondering. I mean, because basically you've got these warehouses, these distribution centers that sort through hundreds of thousands of articles of clothing to decide what's resellable and what isn't. Yeah. So how are they operating?
Yeah, I mean, the way they're laid out is they're laid out in a socially distanced way, right? I mean, these are big facilities, people are spaced out. So it hasn't been the challenge per se to manage that. It's been more of the complexity of, shelter in place regulations, sort of communications from government officials, for example, how Pennsylvania works versus how Georgia works versus how Arizona works. So that has been the trickiest part, is making our employees feel safe, doing what we need to do, but also, abiding by the guidelines. And so our facilities have been, running at a reduced rate, but they're accelerating now. I think we sort of went through the shock and awe of the first month where everybody was a little frenzied. And now I think you're getting to this, like, okay, now we know what we should be doing and how we get back to work.
So your offices are in Oakland, but do you have a distribution center in Alameda County?
We do not. We have no facilities in California. So when we started, we did, and that facility was in San Leandro, California, and then that's the facility we moved to Phoenix. So we have no distribution here, but we do in Pennsylvania, Arizona, California, and Illinois.
So they're still able to operate, but probably just at a slightly or more than slightly slower rate in terms of processing.
Exactly. Just the number of people we've been able to have in those facilities has been lower, but not because we can't have them, just the complexity of people have kids to take care of and all the things that you and I are dealing with writ large, right? So figuring that out.
James, what about sales? I mean, all this week we've been talking to folks from the fashion industry, whether it's Rent the Runway or Beauty Pie or MM LaFleur, And it's a mixed bag. I mean, this industry has been hit really, really hard. Because people aren't going out to retail stores, and B, people are at home. And if anybody has been watching these conversations for the last 5 weeks, that I own only 5 shirts because I just go through the same 5 shirts every single time I'm on this. So I should go to, well, ThredUP doesn't sell men's clothing, but I've got to get some stuff, right? But here's my question: people are buying groceries, they're buying certain products, but how are sales for you? I mean, I imagine that your sales have also been affected.
Yeah, so it's in the beginning, right? I think this sort of mid to late March period, there was like a big contraction. Everybody didn't know what was going on. Share of wallet went to groceries. Since then, we've seen a pretty steady recovery, and the business is actually doing pretty well. Year over year. I mean, the business is still growing double digits. We're not quite at the plan that we had expected to be, prior to this. But I've been shocked at the resilience, frankly, of the business. And I think primarily that's because the price points and the value that we deliver to customers is really good. And so the fact that we only operate online helps tremendously. And our average price is $15. And so I think we play at a price point where when consumers are feeling like a little bit uncertain around what their economic future will look like, they may not buy that $100 dress at X store, but $15 for a top that makes them feel good. I think that's the type of discretionary spending that sort of fits into where we are.
Yeah, I was just kind of like noodling around the site early this morning, and this is rare, but the most expensive thing you have on there is like a Chanel handbag for $2,000. But most of the things that you sell are like $15-$20.
Yeah, and I mean, and even lower. And we for kids, the average price is like $7 or $8. And so I do think that this is a time when people are searching for value, and I think ThredUp is able to provide that. And so I think that's why we've been able to weather this much better probably than our peers.
So you've got, let's talk about, and by the way, we're taking your questions on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I will get to them, I promise. Just one more question from me before we get to some of those. You've got, I think I mentioned you got 500 employees, and I think you already had work from home days, like twice a week.
Yeah.
But this is different, right? I mean, this is work from home all the time for months. How are you keeping your teams, how are you keeping things running efficiently with your teams who work in the headquarters?
It's funny, when the shelter in place order happened, I sent out a team-wide email that, we've been practicing this for 5 years, right? We've been practicing the ability to transition to work from home in a more permanent way for some time. And I think the team really rallied around the idea that we were better prepared than others. But I agree, it's not the same. And so we've been doing all the things that I think others have been doing, except, the one big change, as I mentioned earlier, we did do this furlough, this 20% furlough. And so we took the company down to a 4-day work week. And that was part of it was, sort of rationalizing, expenses and those types of things, but also giving people like a little bit more time, especially if they have kids, to manage that Friday experience and sort of reduce the workload on folks. And I think that has helped. But Guy, one of the things I'm really shocked about is Facebook, Twitter, all these guys announcing these perpetual work from home stuff. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Like, really? I don't think, I think we could do a whole show on like this, because the implications of, that people really do want to work from home forever, I think is totally false. Like, really? I actually think community and culture and teams and how you build those things at work are the things that why people join companies. And like I don't want to sit in my home office 5 days a week. And so it's going to be fascinating to see how this shakes out.
It's such an interesting point, because I think there was I can't remember where I read it, but the vast majority of people in a poll I read do want to go back to work. They want to be surrounded by their colleagues, and they like that connection. The flip side to that, though, is when more people realize that they can work efficiently from home, especially when their kids are back in school all day, there will be questions about, why do I need to live in Oakland or San Francisco or New York City, right? Why can't I live in Reno or in a cheaper city and do what I do from there?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what the simpler narrative of, you know, the housing prices are too expensive in New York, San Francisco, I think understates the reason we live in the Bay Area or live in New York City, right? It's not just because this is where expensive paying jobs are. It's the fact that we get 300 days of sun a year and we can run in the park, you know, all those sorts of things. And so I think there's much more nuance here. And so I'm frankly shocked about the sort of big sweeping announcements of, you know, we're going to work from home forever. I'm like, oh, everybody slow down. It's been 60 days.
That's really interesting. I want to come back to that point. Let me just go to a couple questions that we're getting in from Facebook and YouTube. This is a question from Kim Smith in Richmond, Virginia. She asks, what do you do with the clothes that aren't suitable for resale? So you get people will send you their whole closet full of you know, stuff, and 40, 50%, maybe 75% of it's got, it's not, you can't resell it. What do you do with it?
Yeah, we reject about half of what people send us, and it's generally for quality reasons. And then we do a few things. So we work with some domestic thrift stores where we're able to recycle it, domestically in a thrift store, because sometimes we reject something because it's got a stain. But if you saw it in a thrift store, you'd be like, oh, that's fine. I can get that out. Yeah. So a bunch of it goes that way. Then there's a whole sort of repurposed market of how companies make rags. So things like you use at Jiffy Lube is sort of reconstituted cotton pulp. And so we have a bunch of things. And so what we try and do is ensure that nothing ends up in a landfill. And and so that's sort of the mission of the team that rejects that stuff.
Like when somebody says to you, hey, why would I send my clothes to you guys when, I might only get, money for half of my stuff when I can just donate it to Salvation Army or Goodwill and get a tax write-off? What's your answer to that question? Yeah,
I mean, most people are not optimizing for the tax write-off. I think most people are optimizing for the simplicity of, I just want to get this stuff out of my house. I always joke there's a whole industry that you pay to come pick stuff up at your house.
Yes.
Right. Well, we pick it up for free. And so, our whole effort is making your life simpler, helping you just feel a little bit better about when you walk into your closet. And but, you can also donate through our platform. So when you go to request a clean out kit, we work with a number of charities. Feeding America is our featured charity right now. And you can choose to donate your proceeds instead of earning a payout.
Nice. And what about men's clothing? I know you get asked this all the time. Sorry, I get asked the same questions all the time too. I'm just curious. I haven't asked you that question.
You've already answered it. Is you said you got 4 shirts. So I mean, part of the reason we don't do men's is men wear the same things. Like I wear this black shirt at least once a week. And we wear the same 4 or 5 colors: blue, black, brown, gray. Yeah. And we tend to wear our clothes out at a higher rate. And so the market is really about women.
Got it. That's fair enough. Fair point. Okay. James, you started this business during the 2009 financial crisis, right? I think you were rejected by like 27 investors. You finally found one. Your wife was pregnant. You were like miserable. You're like, no one believes in this idea. You finally found somebody who did believe in it. If you were this is a different crisis. This is worse, and it's going to be worse. But if you were now that kid you were in 2009, now trying to do this, put on your entrepreneurial hat for a moment, because a lot of people watching are entrepreneurs. They have ideas, they have small businesses, they're starting things, they have they want to start things. How would you start to try and navigate this environment right now as an entrepreneur?
So I think you got to address it. So what I suggest is people address it from 2 angles, which is one, what are the consumer behaviors that are changing, right? And so when you go out and look at the world, what are people going to do differently? What when you sort of observe, and I often tell people, like, you got to watch people. Like, how do they behave at home? How do they behave when they're out in the world? Like, what are those behavior shifts going to look like? And where are the pain points, right, that people are experiencing? For example, like I laugh every time that I go to a grocery store right now and I stand in a line outside the grocery store to get into the grocery store. And I think that to me seems like a colossal waste of time. Somebody should figure out a virtual queuing system. There's no reason I should have to wait in line for 20 minutes at Trader Joe's.
I know that Trader Joe's that you're talking about. Webcam for it.
Yeah. So like, I don't get that. Right. So I think you examine the world. I think the other thing is that it's like, you got to pick and work on something you're passionate about and something you want to work on for 10 years. That's what I always tell people. It's like, because we're 10 years into this at ThredUP. And I think sometimes it's easy to find things that are cute or interesting, but you got to find something you want to like work through the very hard times, right, that we're in now for a decade. And I think if you find something where you've identified a unique problem and you're passionate about it in a way that you want to spend 10 years of your life on it, I think then there's something there. But I think too many, entrepreneurs pick these like easy problems. And then I think that's a challenging way to have to spend time, when things get hard.
I wonder about this, this idea between, so with most businesses, right, there's obviously a core mission. And I think one of your core missions, if not your core mission, is to basically, I think you've talked about this, that there's enough clothing in the world to clothe everyone like multiple times over, right? Yeah. And you can make the same argument about plastic. Like, we don't need to make more plastic. There's enough plastic to recycle it forever and ever and ever. And so if we, and the clothing industry is right? I mean, that whole industry is responsible for a huge amount of,
the second most polluting industry in the world. Yeah.
Right. So a good, and this is an argument that Rent the Runway makes, which is why they want people to have a closet in the cloud where you can just rent it and return it. Give me a sense of what it means to be focused on problem solving, but also on profit, right? I mean, there must be an inherent tension between those two things, because I understand the idealism of it and really admire it, but also your business and you need to make money. So how do you weight those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think these are things that are countervailing forces, because I do believe that consumer preferences are changing, where the decision around sustainability is a conscious decision people are making. And I think when they make that decision, they ask themselves, how can I be a smarter consumer? What's interesting about ThredUP is that we're not asking you to pay more to be sustainable. Right. So we're asking you to choose differently. Right. And you can still get great brands at great prices. And I think one of the things we've always believed is that I think if you ask consumers to, it's like buying really green cleaning products at home. Like, there was a time when it was like, look, I want to clean my home with 7th generation cleaning products. The problem is they're 10% or 20% more than the other products I could buy. And so am I willing to make that trade-off? And I think what we have tried to establish with our consumers is that you can actually do the right thing for the planet, but you can actually do it in a way that makes sense for your wallet. And so I think that the businesses right now that are focused on that, like Everlane is a good example, right? Yeah. Everlane is a sustainable brand, but they also don't gouge you on a t-shirt.
Right.
And so I think that's the convergence that I would love to see, where making the smart choice for the planet is actually a good choice for your wallet. And that's what we're trying to do.
I know before the crisis, you guys had partnered up with retailers like JCPenney and Macy's. You just announced one with Abercrombie and Fitch. I mean, JCPenney's, Macy's, obviously those brands are those companies are in big trouble. Yeah. Abercrombie may be as well if those retail locations can't open up or people don't go to them. Tell me about how, this crisis is also changing your business model and your approach to keeping your business sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that the way I think about it is that there's a way to tell the ThredUP story directly to the consumer, right? And we do that through our website and our mobile app, and we build like a awareness and distribution that way. The other way is that you use other people's real estate, other people's platforms, right, to tell the story in different ways. And so just like you have multiple distribution channels for the stories that you tell, for ThredUP, we think about, like, we have multiple distribution channels to tell our story. And, working with partners offline, working with partners online is a way for us to leverage what are very large distribution networks. I mean, say what you want about Macy's and JCPenney's. Those guys got 1,500 stores. They sell a lot of stuff. They have a lot of customers. And so if we can work with them to tell our story about sustainability and our story about the fact that the clothing is so pollutive, I think those are complementary ways. And if we can, and I feel passionate about this, if I can help them, inspire them a little bit to go down this path of reuse and the circular economy, I can make a bigger impact in the world, right? And so I'm just trying to leverage all the assets that I have access to, right, to do that.
But primarily your business is still direct to consumer through your website.
For sure. Yeah, those partnerships are a very, very, very small part of our revenue. but they're a bigger part of our story, right? And I think they help amplify what we're trying to do and the story we're trying to tell to the consumer.
Let's talk about sort of creative marketing at this time. I mean, we talked to Sarah LaFleur of LaFleur a few days ago. They're doing some really interesting things. They're kind of rebranding some of their articles of clothing to remind people, or to point out to people that they can be used as kind of leisure wear at home.
Yep.
I mean, given that you can't market outside of the internet, which is obviously a hugely important marketing tool.
Yeah.
What are some ways that you are kind of thinking about reaching consumers that you ordinarily can do, but under pandemic conditions you can't?
Yeah, I think we're trying to be creative with the messaging and the assets we have, which is we have a bunch of clothing. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. Last year around this time, we launched a campaign called Choose Used, and we repurposed hundreds and I think over 1,000 of these plain white T-shirts, right? And then we crowdsourced really unique and interesting designs from some of the best designers in the world, and we built a campaign around reusing those white T-shirts, right, with new iconography and new slogans, and all around helping people understand about reuse. And so Olivia Wilde was a big partner of ours, and she was incredible. And so we started sending people these used pins that they could put on their backpacks or their clothing or anything to just sort of say, hey, I'm part of this tribe. Right. Because it's funny, what we do is an invisible movement, right? If you buy something used, it doesn't say, I bought this used across the front. Right. And so how do we kind of help communicate that people are passionate about these things? And so, Choose Used was one example of that. And then we have one right now going called Shop Her Closet, which was we're using influencers and celebrities and putting their closets on sale on ThredUP for charity, and just helping people understand that this is an opportunity for, this is not just this is something that transcends demography and economics, and, everybody can do this.
Right. This is a question from Claire Murashima. Claire should be my co-host because she asks great questions all the time. And something I'm also curious about, like what in terms of your own leadership, right? What have you kind of learned about how to lead, and what have you changed about it, and how have you become, how has this kind of forced you to change the way you lead your organization right now?
Well, I think I've seen my job through this crisis as being the steady hand at the till, driving the boat, right? And my job is to make sure that, like, I don't get so caught up in the bad news or the good news or the day-to-day that I can't make really good decisions on behalf of the people in the organization. And so there's so many wonderful operators, in our company on the front lines, but sometimes you get so close to it, you can't like zoom out and ask, like, okay, what should we do for everybody? Like, what should we do for the next year versus what should we do tomorrow? And so I feel like my job has been to be the one who provides enough perspective and enough guidance and context to think about the next, few months. And so I really think about that as my role, which is not to get too weedsy and lose perspective. And so I think I've been the person on the sidelines helping do that for the team. And then also being the guy who says, look, we've been through hard times before, we will get through this, rely on each other, and be just a constant source of, making the folks feel like they can, that we're looking after them and that they can trust us. And then, we've always been an incredibly transparent organization. We publish everything. Everybody knows everything in the company, and maintaining that level of transparency. So people know like how we're doing, and when the business is not doing as well as it was before, like, why. And I think that trust has been built up over time, and I think employees are responding to it.
How much do you think your business depends on the overall economy, working well and functioning well and being strong?
I think our business is incredibly resilient in a downturn. So, I've been saying for years that, when times get tough for consumers, I think there's a flight to value. And ThredUP just provides incredible value. I mean, there's really nowhere else you can find brand names for $15, right? Fresh, new, great stuff. And so I think our business will benefit tremendously, if there is a pullback. And so our job is just to make sure that we're building our brand, building our awareness, building trust with the consumer. So I'm confident in our ability to kind of get through a period like this.
James, when you look back on this in like 5 or 10 years and you say, oh wow, that was a crazy time, but this is how it changed us and it changed what we do or changed me as a leader. What would you like to say?
Well, I think in times of crisis, I think you see great leadership like really shine, right? And I think you see companies with competitive advantages and differentiation and unique value propositions. I think you see those companies really shine when times are hard. When times are great, like everybody wins, right? And you can make crappy decisions all the time and it's like, doesn't matter, right? You're in this like boom economy. But I feel like this is a moment where I'll look back and say, hey, that's where we separated like the really great companies from the really just riding the wave companies. And we did that because we built a great team and we had a great culture and we had a business model that was built right to really shine through tough times. And so I feel, and I talk to my team about this all the time, I feel like this crisis has really shined a light on the fact that we're really good at this. Like we have a good business and a good team and a good offering for consumers. And I'm really proud of that.
Awesome. James, stand by for a sec. I just want to shout out to a couple of people watching. Anthony Bolaños from Marina, California, Amy Diaquisto in Seattle, Washington. Thanks for your question, Amy. Mary Eileen in Amherst, New Hampshire. Mary Kerr in Boston. James Driscoll in Oregon. Leonardo Poggioli from Italy, from the Italian version of ThredUp. Cool. Thanks for watching. Robin Childers in Corvallis, Oregon. Ahmed El Messiri in Chicago. Jad Sefuri. I'm sorry, I'm not able to pronounce all the names right, so please forgive me. Watching by YouTube and many others. Really quick, I just want to thank CrowdStrike for supporting our conversation today. CrowdStrike protects businesses like yours from cyber attacks, ransomware, data theft. Whether your employees are working from home or from the office or in the cloud, CrowdStrike is designed to stop online threats. It's easy, fast, affordable, and effective. It installs in minutes. It takes effect in seconds. You can try it for free. You can learn more about it. Go to crowdstrike.com/NPR. Thank you, CrowdStrike, for supporting this show. We couldn't do these shows without your support. Our series continues. How I Built This Resilience series continues. Next week, we've got a conversation with Melanie Perkins, the founder of Canva. And on Friday, I'll tell you about that in a second. On Friday, we've got Bill Creelman, the founder of Spindrift. Both of them have been on How I Built This. Melanie is in Australia, so we're going to do that conversation at 6 p.m. Eastern next Wednesday. Otherwise, you can catch us right back here next Friday at noon Eastern. We're doing these every Wednesday and Friday. To get reminders, you can RSVP. You can get the RSVP. What are they called? Reminders. Go to nprpresents.org to learn more about that. If you missed any of this week's conversations, amazing conversations during Fashion Beauty Week, go to our YouTube page, howibuiltthis.com/YouTube, or the howibuiltthis.com/Facebook, or the NPR YouTube page. And finally, we've got a brand new episode coming out on Monday. It's Luis Van Ahn, the founder of Duolingo, also the inventor of CAPTCHAs, those things that you have to type into a computer to prove that you're human. So look out for that. Tomorrow, we're going to be putting up our live conversation with Sarah LaFleur from LaFleur on our podcast feed. So look out for that. James Reinhart of ThredUP, thank you for sitting through all these announcements, and thank you for being with us. Such a cool story. So great having you, and I can't wait to hear more.
Hey, Guy, would you mind? Can I do one shout out?
Of course. Yes.
So I have a 96-year-old grandfather, Papa Chuck Reinhart, been an inspiration to me, and I think I've been able to Zoom with him twice a week during all of this. Down in Arizona, and so just giving him a shout out.
Hello, Chuck. Thanks for watching. Thank you, James.
Take care.